The following is a dead bug documentary. If you're watching it anywhere else than my channel, then some thieving fuck stole it.
Warning, the following program contains scenes of death.
Again we read, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Little Evelyn Talbot has experienced so much pain in her life. She's 54 years old, 32 inches tall, and has never walked one day in her life. But thank God one day she will.
In a twinkling of an eye, I shall be caught up and shall be changed. Well, one of these days, I'm going to walk with my Lord. One of these days.
Say the door to heaven is good works. Some say...
Danny, isn't there a scripture for this, Jerry? Don't tell me you were at a loss for words.
Boys and girls, the Lord Jesus Christ is the one who gives us
There are those who believe that there is a higher power, a being that draws an invisible line to keep us all in check. And no, I'm not talking about YouTube. I'm talking about a God, be it Christian, Muslim, Hindu, or whatever you see fit to call a higher power, the one you turn to when you're taking your last breath. To be there, to open up those pearly gates for you, cleanse you of your sins, make you cleaner than the sole on a cripple's boot.
Does this excite you? Think about it. Does it not stagger the imagination?
Yep.
Dead by call.
Case and point. Meet Juan Barbara Rogers and Stephen Mineo, a handsome couple who did everything together, including worship. Because a couple that worships together stays together. No, that's what they say anyways. There's been nothing put on record what Barbara thought when Stephen came to her and said he wanted to join a religion that worshipped lizards. With their fundamental belief that the world's highest offices are held by reptilians. It's possible. My grandmother turned into a lesbian. So I guess worshiping alien lizard men ain't much of a stretch. Besides that, Stephen had a long history of tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theories. Name a conspiracy, and he was signed up to it. Maybe Barbara was just easy going. Or she enjoyed the cock more than common sense. Well, perhaps. Maybe she went along with it too. Being a lizard soldier ain't far of a stretch, I guess. And could probably be pretty cool. But if maybe Barbara researched it enough, she would have changed her mind. Cause there was some pretty heavy stuff online about it. Even a picture of a lizard guy finger-fucking his lizard woman, which for me is out of order and gross. And a bit unrealistic, cause when I was a kid I had a pet iguana named Charles, and I couldn't picture him finger-fucking no one. But I'm digressing here. Like any tin whistle called, they had low production values in their videos, and for most outsiders, were a little hard to fathom.
66 books in the Bible representing that it's under Illuminati control. Shakespeare encoding his name in the New Testament. He was the one who wrote it. If you think God wrote KJV, don't you think he would have...
Why do dudes in cults have high voices? To make it even stranger, this bunch of fruitcakes all worship this woman who wrote a couple of shitty sci-fi books ages ago. And that's her with a feather haircut, which I'm hoping is from the 1980s. But who the fuck knows, these cults don't follow fashion, that's for sure. But I guess for the young couple, they found something that were otherwise missing from their lives. From what I gather, things were going good within the cult.
Hey, how are you, my reptilian brother?
Until Barbara started posting some fucked up things on Facebook about how she enjoyed eating raw meat and she craved it, and some of the cult people saw it and they figured she were a witch, which I guess is worse than being a giant lizard. Anyway, they didn't want her in the cult anymore. When they told Stephen that they thought his beloved were a witch, well, I guess it fucked him up pretty bad and he sunk into a deep depression because the cult were his life.
And it were where he recreated and whatnot.
And apparently these lizard lovers were leaning on him something awful, and he got depressed. One day he pulled out his gun, pushed it to his head, and he made his woman pull the trigger. Do it. Do it. Jeez. Yeah, I know it's gross for sure, but at the end of the day, it's real life. This ain't the Disney Channel. She apparently said she didn't think it were loaded, which sounds a bit suspicious to me. But I suppose, in the general overview of things and whatnot, it's still death by cold.
Oh yeah.
hit me. You know he's doing it. Who's doing it? God is doing a new thing.
Welcome home, beloved of God. Welcome to a place where sin and Satan cannot enter.
Lord.
Welcome to heaven, where joy will be yours forever.
Welcome to Tokyo, the land of sake and stinky fish. But in the early 1990s, fish weren't the only things stinking up the streets of Japland. Meet one Shoko Asahara, a 2-bit, half-blind, failed acupuncturist. I hope I'm not being too harsh here. Well, when he decided to start his own doomsday cult and call it the Supreme Truth, people were a bit dubious. And they were probably laughing behind his back. Well, let's be honest here, probably right to his face, because he's blind and you can do that sort of thing. But when he started meeting world leaders and people were paying up to $5,000 to drink his blood or sip on a nice steaming cup of java made out of his pubic hair, I guess investors figured they should have got in on it. Because he even made a special skull helmet that could read his brain waves, and he was giving it away for a bargain of $40,000. And apparently it were flying off the shelves, especially at Christmas. But when members of this registered religion started going missing and then turning up dead, well, even the Jap government had to take notice, because it were helping people get closer to their god a little sooner than they expected, with techniques that included immersion in scalded water, sleep and food deprivation, and being buried under the ground for weeks at a time. I could be buried alive, but I ain't gonna bathe with another dude. Hey, is he jerking this guy off? Anyhow, the stinky guru told his followers, that included some of Japan's brightest minds, that this were all in preparation for a nuclear war, where they would be the survivors and then have to run the planet. I guess kinda like Planet of the Apes, but this time with Orientals. And although red flags were raising everywhere in the government, the problem is, after World War II, trying to wean its people off worshipping an emperor, a new constitution was passed that gave the people a right to choose their own god, giving Japan the unofficial title of being crackpot cult capital of the world. If the shoe fits. Making it hard for the government to close these zipperheads down. Worse still, none of these cults had to release their numbers, so no one knew how many members there were. And the former joke, known as the Supreme Truth, was starting to catch on. He even had his own Saturday morning cartoon, with membership exploding even beyond Japan's border, becoming huge in commie Russia. And with donations from rich benefactors, the cult was able to start buying weapons from the commies and smuggling them into Japan, in preparation for what they believed was a clandestine nuclear siege. And the almighty odorous one had a number of parlor tricks to convince his followers that he were a modern-day deity, including walking around town wearing masks of his likeness and levitating. And they bought the stinker, hook, line, and sinker. But there was something even more sinister going on behind the cheesy stage shows and the goofy costumes. The cult had been acquiring chemicals behind the scenes and secretly developing sarin nerve gas, a weapon of mass destruction. Because I guess they were getting sick of waiting for the apocalypse and thought they'd bring it on themselves. It were on March 20th, 1995, when 12 of the cult leaders' most trusted commanders were given parcels of liquid sarin, one of the world's most dangerous chemicals, that they wrapped in newspaper. The group, now carrying what is considered a weapon of mass destruction, entering different stations in Tokyo's packed subway system, carrying umbrellas and synchronized watches. And it was exactly at 8 a.m. that they pierced their packages, releasing its abundance of cult goodness. And the death clock was now ticking. What sarin does is make every muscle in your body flex, even your eyeballs, and it flexes, and it flexes, until you pop like a goddamn water balloon. You go blind, you shit yourself, and then you die. Well, that's if you're lucky. By lunchtime, over 12 people were dead, and over 5,000 wounded who were suffering from permanent blindness and nerve damage, meaning they'd be wearing diapers for the rest of their lives. Probably Japanese diapers. And when the rice-eating cops found the empty packages of sarin, well, it didn't take them too long to figure it out, because they already knew that the Doomsday Cult had been acquiring chemicals. So they raided the cult's compound and brought the dirty blind fucker to justice. And he didn't even see it coming. Well, mostly because he was blind, and his followers went mental. But I guess you could already say they were mental, so it didn't fucking matter. And they kept an eye on the Doomsday Cult for the next 2 years, and arrested about 200 of them, put 100 to death, and gave the rest a life sentence. And as for old Marble Eyes with the long silky hair, well, they saved the best for last, and they hung him high. At least higher that he could levitate. But that dirty fucker, he fought hard for his life, with the best legal teams and money could buy. And although his eyes weren't too good at seeing, apparently witnesses say they were good at crying as they dragged his blind ass to the gallows. Easy peasy, Japanesey.
There's something even more glorious to me in John 14:2. Again we read, "Behold, I make all things new." This means there's no aging in heaven. In fact, age is unknown when we get our glorified bodies. Here we see a typical example. Glorified body.
I need to report an anonymous tip. Who do I talk to?
Okay. This is regarding what?
This is regarding a mass suicide, and I can give you the address.
When an anonymous caller dialed 911 and ordered a convoy of meat wagons for pickup of corpses with 6 days of rot in the multi-million-dollar gated community of Santa Fe. They sent only 6 ambulances, all they had. I guess they misunderstood what the words mass suicide meant, because with 39 corpses, they were a little short. When the son of a Presbyterian minister, a school teacher who was fired for having sex with one of his male students, who ended up a petty car thief serving time in jail, well, he decided to turn his life around. And what better way to do it than start a religion that worshipped aliens? And why the fuck not? He already fantasized about being anally probed by spacemen, delivering their load. Space, the final frontier. Well, it was actually a psychiatric ward that Marshall Applewhite and former nurse Bonnie Nettles decided to start their own cult, based on the premise that they were outer space emissaries to the peace and love movement. And I guess there were enough acid burnouts to buy their utopian dream. And the former hippies, now come yuppies, were all too willing to hand over their inheritance to the shysters for a first-class ticket to outer space.
A moment ago when I said that the big surprise could come, that spacecrafts could come in by the thousands.
After all, it were the 1970s, and there were more than one fucking nutcase believing in pyramid power. Why should George Lucas be the only one to profit from it? Applewhite's theory were a simple one, that the Hale-Bopp comet that passed Earth every 2,000 years contained a spaceship hiding in its fiery trail, and in that spaceship were aliens that were gonna transport up all the believers and take them to paradise. And yeah, sure, it sounds as fucked up as a retard giving haircuts with a weed whacker, but people were buying it. Don't forget, this is California, and they invented homosexuality. But it was that homosexuality that Applewhite was trying so hard to suppress that led him to castrating himself, to which he strongly urged fellow members to do the same. which I don't know how that works with the women. But I guess a homo without balls is like a baseball player without a bat. And I guess what would seem like a drastic measure to be part of a club didn't matter. And membership were growing. But there's a thing that every crackpot cult leader eventually learns. And that's when you set a date. Now sooner or later that date will arrive. And you gotta deliver. And the remaining members of Heaven's Gate were getting itchy feet, wondering if that date were ever gonna arrive. So sensing that a mutiny may be approaching, Captain No Scrotum ordered everybody to pack their bags and leave their balls behind, cause we got a spaceship to catch, and not before we make a farewell video. So put on your best outfits and make this cult look good.
Okay, I'll go first. I know you've already heard us talk a lot about restraint, and that's because every member of the next
I think everyone in this class wanted something more than the human world had to offer.
This is a very joyous time for the class to be able to be returning home.
I've been in the class for 3 years, just about 3-4 days ago, and I don't know, I just feel like I've learned so much about the next level.
So if any of you guys want to know what happens when you cut your balls off, take a hard look, cause it ain't pretty.
I spent a few years from like 1988 to 1990.
After sharing with the world how excited they were to be embarking on a space journey and to leave this miserable world behind, the 39 members of Heaven's Gate went out for their last meal at McDonald's. They went back to their $1 million home they all shared and worshipped at, dressed in their finest space traveling gear, right down to the tacky Sgt. Pepper badges. And then they all sat down to enjoy a snack, a bowl of applesauce each, laced with barbiturates, with a large bottle of moderately priced vodka. They then tied a plastic bag around their neck and laid down for their last journey home.
Okay. Now Steeler is going to take over on
Okay, what we're looking at is what we're looking at are coroner's officials, scientific investigators outside the gates of this exclusive home here in Rancho Santa Fe. Now, what's going on down there?
I guess we'll never know what the 39 members of the religious group, sometimes called a cult, Heaven's Gate, were thinking as they finished their last bit of applesauce and washed it down with a vodka chaser. And they laid down, slipped into the abyss. The same ways we'll never know why they were each carrying exactly $5.75 in their personage. I guess you still need money in outer space. Or perhaps there's a slight entrance fee. And I certainly hope that they had a change of clothes once they got there. Because police reports show that when they arrived, after 6 days worth of rot, they smelled something awful. And I guess there's a side of us all that want to feel bad for them. But if you think about it, what if they were right? What if there were a spaceship hiding in behind that trail of the comet, and it landed, and it took them up to paradise, and they're up there right now, laughing away, in a place where you don't even need your balls and a working cock. And then I guess it would them who be having the last laugh. It would be us who were the crazy ones. But come to think of it, I ain't a gambling man. And I'll keep my balls and cock right where they are, thank you.
And now, let me say a word to you who are watching this film. Have you made your plans as to where you will spend eternity? What would happen to you if Jesus should come back today?
Jim Jones, the leader of an American religious cult.
Jim Jones led over 900 of his followers into the mass suicide.
One of the biggest mass suicides in recorded history.
The only thing I can do is to be an aggressive heterosexual with a man or woman. I don't care whatever you want to be. You be the woman. I would do that for socialism.
And one egghead philosopher who once said that you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Jimmy Boy knew that. He'd fuck man, woman, even children in his quest for a syphilitic utopia. Raised in Depression-era America to a strict Presbyterian family, young Jimmy Jones knew about hardship, that's for sure. And what he didn't know You could squeeze it all out and drink a freshly squeezed glass of hardship. In the shadow of Hitler's world domination, America was its most anti-Semitic in its history. Jimmy Jones learned early about hating your fellow man. He didn't like what he saw, and he promised himself early in life that he would set about making a change, where man and woman from all countries, shades, and colors can live together in peace and harmony. A goddamn rainbow utopia where nobody hates nobody. Living in race-segregated hillbilly Texas, and Jones an outcast himself, he developed an early kinship with the blacks, who his impoverished family lived side by side with. And it was in that Pentecostal church, the most despised of the churches, that he found acceptance and love. And from an early age, he took to ministering the Word of God, or at least his interpretation of it. And by all accounts, his brand of God preaching were catching on, like a retard playing with matches in a toilet paper factory. One of the few places that blacks and whites could congregate together. But where you find equality, and people being able to speak their mind, you're always going to find hatred. And by all accounts, Reverend Jones ran into plenty of hatred, and he moved his congregation accordingly, from township to township, all while receiving threats of death, and that his church should be burnt down with his followers inside of it. And almost as a form of silent rebellion, Jones and his wife started adopting kids of different races into their family. And if you want to piss off hillbilly America, well, that's the way to do it.
I was married at a young age. We were beginning to adopt a youngster at that time. Ready to develop my own controversial stance on race.
But I guess if anything, Reverend Jimmy Jones were proving that he could talk the talk and walk the walk. And he wasn't going to be nobody's God, bitch.
Been vandalized, and we have been harassed, and even our lives threatened because of our stand on immigration.
It was the height of the hippie movement when Jimmy Jones packed up his God Squad and headed to San Francisco, the city of love. Well, why not? There'd already been rumors of sexual improprieties within his congregation, where Jimmy were fucking boys, girls, men, women. It didn't matter, because it were in the name of God, and he were the Christian motherfucker to the masses. And when the newspapers started being critical of what he were doing, he called them in to witness what he said were going to be a miracle.
Take that step.
And then he cured an old bag with gimp legs right before their disbelieving eyes. Goddamn miracle. Even they said so. By a doctor's own account, just that morning she'd been shitting in a plastic bag. Now she were fucking dancing like Jimmy Walker. Okay, lady, stop showing off. Yeah, she was dynamite, all right. It was around this same time that more and more outsiders were noticing that the Reverend's preaching were becoming less and less about God, and more about social transformation with semi-apocalyptic overtones.
Armageddon that would spring forth in a nuclear hell, we have to be prepared for that, but we also have to be prepared to go to other places in the world if a dictatorship takes over. Because I told you that not one of my children is going to end up in a concentration camp. I said they'll have to kill us all first. Are your fingers numb?
Playing with theatrics that he learned as a boy from the traveling carnivals. In his quest to establish an egalitarian, utopian Christian community, he were willing to bend the truth a little bit. And these were simple, God-fearing people who needed something to believe in. And the more power the Reverend Jim Jones were getting, the more he were covered in that power. And now, like Jesus coming in for the kill, the death clock were ticking. And it was around this same time that Jones started asking his congregation if they'd be willing to die for their cause, even suggesting that they hijack a passenger plane, shoot the pilot in the head, and crash it into the city. The demagogue, who had a taste for black pussy, were now in absolute control.
Call me father, call me mother, call me morphodite, call me queer, call me whatever you want. I don't care what you call me. I'm not afraid of nobody.
There were now reports leaking out to the press that the Reverend were now addicted to drugs. addicted to sex, and addicted to his own cult of personality.
The people have made it an ugly land. They've made it a land of graft and greed and racism and war. This is a bad time.
Because they're not going to round us up like the Japanese. They're not going to round us up like the Indians. No, 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 no.
It was then that the motherfucker to the masses, the Reverend with the stinky fingers, suggested the place they could all go where all the pain and racism and hurt will go away. "1970s Guyana, one of the few countries in the region that spoke English, with a socially leaning government, 24 hours over the ocean, and a 9-hour drive down one dirt road to get there, in the middle of nowhere, just like Adam and Eve. And the People's Temple started booking their tickets lickety-split. And with nothing there but forest, they were gonna start building their own city, Jonestown. Self-sufficient, grow their own crops.
This is a beautiful place here, and you can see how all the banana plants and everybody here is really enjoying here, and I really do like it.
And I'm just so glad to be a part of this down here, to be able to work and build a land.
I am really grateful to be a part of this family.
I really don't have any desire whatsoever back to the United States ever.
But little did they know that they weren't going back to the United States. No, at least not standing.
Here are the people at the table, eating an afternoon snack. You see Pepsi-Colas here for 3 cents, American money. These are potato chips made from plantain, and they're more delicious. They're a combination of a potato chip and a French fry. And radishes, You don't know what you're missing down here?
But the propaganda films the Reverend Jones were making and sending back home to entice the rest of his congregation to join them weren't telling the entire truth. Because if you look closer at those bananas, they still got their price tags on them. Because the con man had been conned, and the land that he'd been sold couldn't grow much of nothing. They weren't even growing enough to feed themselves, and were literally starving to death. That's if the dysentery didn't kill them first in their syphilitic paradise, and no one on the outside had a clue. But that were all about to change when a high-profile magazine did an expose on Reverend Jones and the People's Temple. It was then that family and ex-members of the religious group started coming forward in droves with stories of underage sex, drug abuse, members being beaten, held against their will. No longer something that could be ignored, California sent over a congressman with a news crew and reporter from NBC to see what all the hubbub was about. When Congressman Ryan and his small party arrived in Guyana, they were told that Reverend Jones were unwilling to meet with them. Ryan said it didn't matter. They were coming anyways. And good to his word, he showed up with the news crew just before dinner, landing in a small nearby clearing, a makeshift airfield. By all accounts, when the congressman arrived, he was met by happy, smiling people who seemed to love where they were. Although we now know that this friendship club was staged for the benefit of Senator Ryan and the news crew.
I think that all of you know that I'm here to find out more about questions that have been raised about your operation here. And I can tell you right now that from a few conversations I've had with some of the folks here already this evening, that whatever the comments are, there are some people here who believe that this is the best thing that ever happened to them in their whole life.
It was at the end of the night's proceedings, while shaking hands with the congregation members, that the congressman was handed a note that said, "Congressman Ryan, please get us out of Jonestown." Later that night, when he asked the news crew what they thought they should do, they told the senator that they figured they should all get out of Jonestown as soon as possible and say nothing. Advice that Ryan ignored and said that all of them was safe as they were shielded by the American government. The death clock was now ticking. The next morning, Ryan confronted Reverend Jones with the note.
Last night, someone came and passed me this note.
He's the one that I'm just talking about. This is the man that wants to leave his son here.
Doesn't it concern you, though, that this man, for whatever reason, one of the people in your group...
People play games, friend. They lie. What can I do about lies? Are you people going to leave us? I just beg you, please leave us. Bill, we will bother nobody. Anybody wants to get out of here can get out of here. We have no problem about getting out of here. They come and go all the time. I don't know what kind of game. People like publicity. Some people do. I don't. But some people like publicity. But if it's so damn bad, why is he leaving his son here? Can you give me a good reason for that?
When the Reverend announced everybody they were free to leave if they wanted to, all hell broke loose.
You bring those kids back here! You bring them back! Don't you get back here!
The floodgates were now open, with the Reverend making a plea. You can't leave. You're my people. But it was also clear the drug-addled Messiah weren't gonna give up without a fight. As families were being separated, some fathers wanted to take their kids while the mothers wanted to stay, depending on the degree that they had been brainwashed. It was then that a crying and shaking member of the cult approached Congressman Ryan from behind and screamed out, "You're gonna die, motherfucker," and stabbed him. The congressman, now knowing that he wasn't shielded by the American government, bid a hasty retreat to the airport with his crew and some of the family members. Congressman now on the way to the airport, an announcement came over Jonestown's loudspeakers, telling everyone to meet at the central meeting area. At this point, the congressman, along with the family members who wanted to leave, arrived at the makeshift airfield. That is, at this time, they realized that they had been followed from Jonestown by a dump truck. Inside the dump truck were one of Jim Jones's close lieutenants and 3 armed men who got out of the truck, walked up to the plane, stared at them, but said nothing. It was at this point a tractor pulled up with a trailer, and inside that trailer, more men appeared with guns. Executing everyone in sight, and giving the congressman a special send-off with 22 bullets.
We have been so terribly betrayed. But we tried, and as Jack Beam often said, I don't know where he's at right this moment. Where's Jack? He said, if this only worked one day, it was worthwhile. What's going to happen here in a matter of a few minutes is that one of those people on that plane is going to shoot the pilot. I know that. I didn't plan it, but I know it's going to happen. They're going to shoot that pilot, and down comes that plane into the jungle. And we had better not have any of our children left when it's over, because they'll parachute in here on us. I'm telling you just as plain as I know how to tell you. I've never lied to you. I never have lied to you. It's too late. The congressman's dead. The congressman's dead. Many of our traitors are dead. They're all laying out there dead. I didn't, but my people did. My people did. They're my people. And they've been provoked too much. They've been provoked too much. What's happened?
Glad to be here. Okay.
Please, for God's sake, let's get on with it. We've lived as no other people have lived and loved. We've had as much of this world as you're going to get. Let's just be done with it. Let's be done with the agony of it. It's far, far harder to have to watch you every day die slowly, and from the time you're a child to the time you get gray, you're dying. It's honest, and I'm sure that they'll pay for it. They'll pay for it. This is a revolutionary suicide. This is not a self-destructive suicide. The No more, no more. We're trying. Everybody will relax. The best thing you do to relax, and you'll have no problem. You'll have no problem with the thing if you just relax. The children here a great deal because of Jim Jones.
The book says no more.